Drive to any gas station in the country and the numbers are disturbing. Gas prices are high, but diesel prices are much higher. For trucking companies, especially owner-operators and small fleets, the price of diesel is becoming an adversary for those groups when razor-thin margins are the norm. So how did we get here? With low reserves in the Northeast and prices escalating towards $6 a gallon for diesel, there are multiple factors to take into consideration. FreightWaves enterprise trucking expert Thomas Wasson.
Looking at the historical trend here, you can tell on our map here, which is diesel price per gallon as well as DOE, that fuel, and beginning in October of last year as pandemic-related restrictions and people got out more, we're starting to see an increase around $3.50 going upwards. The biggest thing to wonder, though, why are we here, is because of geopolitical tensions impacted between Russia and Ukraine. To give you an example here, once hostilities began going towards February, we start to see the rise towards $4 per gallon. As soon as everybody figured out that Russia plays a huge impact on diesel supplies worldwide, we can see that that is when we start seeing this upward movement past $5 per gallon and running into the situation that we are now.
Though COVID and the Russian invasion of Ukraine play big parts in this scenario, it starts with lost refineries in the Northeast. FreightWaves.com editor-at-large and fuel expert John Kingston.
It's also starting to feel the impact of having lost so much refining capacity over the years. I can think of two big refineries that have gone down just in the last 2 or 3 years. The East Coast is paying for that, for the fact that its refining sector has taken a big hit over the years.
Adding to the pressure of the market was IMO 2020, a resolution to lower sulfur in marine oil. While the impact wasn't immediately felt in 2020 during the height of the pandemic, it is making a massive impact now.
There was a lot of fear that this was going to spike the diesel market higher because an important blend stock that goes into making diesel called VGO instead would get diverted into making something called very low sulfur marine oil, a new product designed for IMO 2020. And I do think that one of the reasons you're seeing diesel higher is not just because of Russia, not just because of constraints in the eastern U.S. refining system, but I think also the impact of IMO 2020 in this diversion of kind of diesel-based molecules or distillate-based molecules into the marine fuel pool has been a significant factor here.
But perhaps the biggest contributor to diesel prices spiking as they have is as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the sanctions that followed from the West.
You know, the Russians produce about 10 to 11 million barrels a day. Obviously, they use about, I think, 3 to 4 million barrels a day of consumption. You know, so that leaves about 6 million in exports. You know, for all the talk about embargoes, if they're down to 3, that means, you know, there's still about 3 million barrels a day getting out of the market. So they're not going to be cut off completely. So 3 million barrels a day is a lot to make up, and it has to get made up. It does have to get made up one way or the other. Markets will balance. They will find a way to balance.
Not only are 3 to 4 million barrels not coming to the U.S., they also aren't going to Europe, which is starved for diesel fuel. That puts the U.S. between a rock and a hard place in wanting to be the main supplier of oil to Europe. However, even if exports do continue to Europe, only one geographical region in the U.S. is likely to take the brunt of an economic hit. Campbell University Assistant Professor for History, Dr. Sal Mercogliano.
As long as that demand is there, they're going to pull diesel out of the shortest route to get to, you know, the reason New England is short, understand, is because it's the shortest route from New York to Europe. You know, if you can pay 4 days for a tank or 5 days for a tanker to get across the Atlantic, that's better than paying 8 days from the Gulf of Mexico.
Which brings us to today, where whisperings from diesel providers are telling trucking companies that they might have to start rationing diesel. One refinery owner even tweeted he would be surprised if rationing didn't start this summer. So how bad is the situation? We asked fuel buying expert Scott Burhang about the current climate for fuel buyers.
What we are seeing at the retail level is scattered instances. We've seen it in the Northeast. We're starting to see it in other parts of the country as well, where the owner of the truck stop, you know, whether it's Love's or Pilot or whoever, and I'm not saying they're doing it, but I'm just using them as an example. What they're doing is they're capping the amount of fuel you can take in a single transaction. Okay. Now, the rationale behind that, I think, is really more of a protective stance. They want to make sure that nobody's hoarding anything.
The main ingredient pushing these diesel prices up, according to Burhang, is a psychological impact of how tenuous the situation is.
A lot of what is driving this market is a bit of psychological concerns about what's happening and the instability of a lot of things, the instability of the U.S. economy, the instability of carbon initiatives, like really everything. It's just there's a lot of people who trade futures markets that are concerned, in anything that happens will either drive the price way up or it'll drive the price way down. That eventually trickles down to what's happening at the pump.
In the end, all three of our experts see this as a long-term problem with no quick solution seen anywhere down the line, no matter what happens in Eastern Europe.
The nightmare scenario is always, let's say, some terrible thing in Saudi Arabia that would take them off the market. And that never happened. And I don't think anybody ever saw the terrible scenario of Russia being shunned by everybody and then not being able to attract capital, outside capital. So that's got me really concerned.